Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to this evening's episode. When nature nurtures your nature. What at first appears as a play on words, but then appears as a play on worlds. I was thinking about sharing certain personal experiences I've had with nature, certain insights, and really its position in human life. This is, of course, something that should always be talked about and continuously discussed. How man is relevant to the natural world. And how even notions of the unnatural have arrived. I don't know how to say it, to be honest. I was just scrolling over my childhood memories. And I can tell you that nature has a presence of its own. It is as if a mind that is thinking, but it is thinking as the environment. What we notice ourselves to be is fragments of nature. I had this experience. Let me start from here. I had this experience in the UK in 2015. The second year I was in Birmingham in 2014, I had started these talks. I remember in 2015, I found myself in a very strange situation where I had mishandled both my desires and my finances. And I had reached this point where I remember I was sitting on this grass field on this university campus, and I had nothing. And I remember I sat somewhere in front of this pond in Aston University in Birmingham, UK. And as I stared into the pond, there was this family of ducks in the pond swimming. And I sat there simply, and I remember this was I found it was kind of like seeing behind the scenes in the mind of nature. I was seated there in front of the pond, maybe like half a meter away, my knee from the pond. And the pond had bushes all around it. No, certain parts of it. I see from behind me this small bird fly. So imagine you're sitting in front of a pond. Suddenly you notice from above your head a bird flies above your head, and this bird flew onto this bench. And I remember I just get up and go sit on that bench, and this family of ducks steps out of the pond. I don't know what it is. Nature doesn't speak a language. It doesn't. The way I would say we communicate with nature is by just noticing how we are being a communication of nature. There is really no language, specific language, to communicate with an ecosystem. That means if you want to communicate to a person, that's easy. But if you want to communicate to a whole ecosystem, you can't. You just see how the environment is, and you either flow with it or against it. And that's all our psychology. That we're this natural being, we have categorized things. Certain categories are against nature, they're resisting the nature of things, and certain categories don't resist the nature of things. You know, we're in this world once, and we, as a species, acknowledge that we're temporary, yet people don't have their act straight, you know. And so what it is that it's like, let's say reality had a truth, okay? Let's say we thought reality was A, we thought reality was B, we suddenly see, oh wait, reality is C, okay? Now this reality that we have accepted as C has limits in itself. The sun shines upon us all to remind us that there's more than shadows here. You know, it's really an endurance game, this life. You're enduring till the end. And based on how you consider your beginning, you will feel you will meet your end. You know, sometimes I felt everybody is going always to the reverse. The person was quiet in their childhood. When they grow older, they become loud. You know, the person was loud in their childhood, they grow older, they become quiet. And it's like this constant oscillation from adjustable archetype to the moment to another archetype to another archetype. Really, it's like I don't feel anybody knows on this planet that what the human being is. We can't define it because it is the definer. That means the person first thought God was a man-made idea, then was like, oh my God, the idea of man is man-made too. What does that even mean? We have reached the point where man, before man made the idea of man. And what were we then? You know, what kind of a creature were we in that nature that hadn't spoken yet? Sorry guys, hold on, the sun's hitting my eye, I gotta do something about this. Okay guys, so it's better now. Nihal in the chat sections, like anyone here. You know that, Nihal, that is the most mystical question ever, really. Is anyone here? Is it a singular phenomenon? Is it multidimensional? What do human beings do about the endless possibilities of known and unknown variables? That means really sometimes I think about, like, if you look at a bird, if you look at a bird, you'd see like the bird's head. If you look at a bird's head, it endlessly scans. It's like left, right, left, right. You know, it's like this constant shift of head movement in scanning its environment. So one thing we know about the human being, that it's designed to process the world. So similarly, we can say, just like how the bird scans, the human being is doing the same scan, but it is doing it ideologically. We look at one situation, we think it means this. We look at it, something else in another angle, it means something else. You know? Really what it is there's no such thing as a belief system. We don't have we are not the same DNA to be even capable of having the same beliefs. The thing about nature is that it is silent, and the second thing is that it's moving. That means we can say sound is technically the evolution of movement. You know, who knows? All these talks that I'm giving, maybe they are some sort of higher dimensional existence simultaneously. The language is very crucial, you know. I mean, here's the thing. Imagine we're at the center of an onion. Let's say the universe has onion style multidimensionality, these kind of concentric spheres. So imagine we're in the first layer. Imagine right now there were 7 layers to Earth and we were in the first layer. And we thought we knew exactly what the other layers were. You know, the thing about the multidimensionality of concentric spheres is that really the bigger sphere holds it all. There's a story I would like to share with the audience. In this story, there's a man who seeks enlightenment, and he realizes there's this enlightened sage that he sits in at this like cow field, like there's this kind of fence kind of cow field, and the guru, this enlightened guru, he would sit there and meditate in the mornings. And this guy notices this enlightened guy sitting here, so he goes and talks to him. And he says, hey man, you know, I want to know about enlightenment, you know, it's like give me the teaching or whatever. And the guy suddenly sits, as he's seated, he just closes his eyes and he gets some sort of intuitive vision or something. And he gets up very sincerely and he looks at the person and says, hey, you got to take these 400 cows I have to this field in the mountains. When there are 1,000, come back and I will tell you the secret. So what happens is that the guy thinks for a second. He's like, what is this? Is this guy just using me to work? But then the guy's like, why would this guy trust me with 400 of his cows? So the guy feels there's something to it. He trusts the what the person said, the guru said, the sage said. And what happens is the guy takes the 400 cows to this field in the mountains. He goes there and there's a rock and he sits there on the rock. And so the cows are all there grazing, and every day he's counting the cows one by one. And eventually he's there for so long, and it's taking so long for the cows to become 1,000, that every day he's sitting, on this rock or whatever. I mean, you can't sit on a rock for that long. Let's say he was sitting on a rock, but this rock had a chunk of grass on top of it, so technically it was cushioned rock. You know? But this guy's sitting there for so long that he forgets. He forgets why he's there. He forgets how to even count the cows. And he just gets blissed out by how nature is okay before having any opinion on itself. We human beings, we judge each other very critically, very intensely, but nobody cares about the squirrel on the branch. Nobody gets angry at a bird, you know? At animals, you can't really get angry. Anyways, this guy's there for so long that one day, like, he's become pure presence. He's noticed his presence in this life pretty much. Or I would say nature's presence that is within your presence, within the presence of your nature. So anyways, one day one of the cows comes up to this guy and it's like, hey man, we're 1,000, we gotta go back. And the guy's like, whoa, he suddenly remembers why he's there, you know? And he's like, right, right. And he comes to count the cows and he immediately remembers everything, remembers, like, how to count them, whatever. The guy is walking back. He forgets the way back, and suddenly, as the story goes, the wind and the birds tell him where to go, and he goes. And he's coming back, and it's like morning, same time. The cows are so enlightened, that the cows just all go into the barn, and the guy goes up to the guru, and he's noticed this presence of nature. And the guru, he says, okay man, tell me the secret, your cows are 1,000, like the act's been done. And the guru looks at him and he notices from his eyes that, yeah, this guy's seen it, he's noticed. And he says, you already know the secret, and laughter ensues. The reason is because once that person was in nature, you see, if we treat the brain as a muscle, and if we say we're suffering, and the suffering is constant, then it's as if the brain is being used so much that it's believing its only purpose is to be used. It's like a muscle. But there is something I will tell you that's different about the interface of subjectivity for this biological organism. I have given many talks, and it's like I could tell you, I've been the most extreme tired. I've been extremely tired. But when I've come to give these talks, it's like there's something about uh, um, rhythmic visualization that doesn't take any energy. That means it's like sometimes, of course, I feel like I'm looking at things like opening the hood of a car and looking at the engine of a concept, the design of a concept, but there's times where it's as if the moment, it's like I'm seeing an inner event. That means it's like, if it's like seeing the Mona Lisa in person rather than having so many different beliefs of what it's like. Because you've seen it, they say an image is like 1,000 words. So let's say every image in the person's mind has a potential to become 1,000 words. It's kind of fascinating, no? That like on the surface of this rock where everything is kind of crooked and not crooked but like curved and not straight, you know, like geometrically speaking, suddenly man has built what man has built has been geometrically relevant. Like, look at this wallpaper right now I've chosen for this talk, and everything man-made you can see has a sort of uh, platonic geometry to it. I can tell you that there is a nature to your mind as well, but the nature of the mind is accessed through stillness and silence. So strangely, as the more the body moves and the person, it's like generates kind of movement. It's as if like movement is what keeps the outer realms going. Silence and stillness is what keep the inner realms going. And I'm telling you, there is this contrast. You know, just like how we see the contrast between black and white, we can say that there is a contrast to life where we see its fullness and its absence. Pretty much when I look at history, you know what's happened? Human beings have been living, yeah, inefficiently, thinking it's efficient until they've realized there's something else more efficient. There's something called the Frank Jackson knowledge argument for qualia. Qualia is, you can say, a philosophical, a term that has a sort of philosophical value in suggesting an inner experience, something that is relevant to the experiencer, the personal experiencer. So your immediate experience of consciousness in one moment is like a qualia, you can say, internally. It's like the explanation of an inner event where only the conscious viewer has access. So Frank Jackson, in his knowledge argument, which is called Mary's Room, and I'm going to tell you an adaptation of it, as much of it as I could tell you this, that in Mary's Room, the idea is, I mean, it's kind of strange because Frank Jackson rejected his own idea in a strange way at the end of his career. But like the idea, his argument has value. What is his argument? Mary's Room. There's this scientist named Mary. She knows everything about accurately about biology and everything going on from the neurology of the human being to the vocal cords and all of this. Okay. Now the thing is, Mary is inside a room where everything is black and white, and there are, instead of windows in this room, screens that are showing the outside world in black and white. So Mary, even though she has so much accurate analysis of physical events, yet she's seeing it only in black and white. Now what happens is that Frank Jackson says, now imagine Mary, this woman, she leaves the house and she goes outside, and when she goes outside she discovers that there's so many different colors, and imagine she sees the color red. Now upon seeing the color red, she realizes what she thought was black and white only is not black and white. So Frank Jackson was using this as a suggestion that if you are in a material position, but if you experience something beyond that materiality that changes the value of that materiality, technically the previous value of what matter is false. What that means is one of the most shocking, mind-blowing things can happen for our civilization. And you know what it is? That matter doesn't exist. And the question is more stranger than we can fathom. I would say in Frank Jackson's argument, of course, he's proving materialism is false. He's saying it can't be matter because if you see something more, or even if you have seen a depth to something, it meant what you thought was the previous absolute depth is flawed. Now, I'll also add this, that Frank Jackson, the way he rejected it was that he said that the moment, let's say, Mary leaves the room and sees the color red and says, wow, this is the color red, that moment is also another qualia. So what the way he rejected his own theory is by seeing an additional dimension. But his idea was significant. It is as significant as Plato's allegory of the cave. That what we think we know is just the thought of that moment. That means this becomes fun after a while when the person stops. I don't know, it took me a while to experientially learn this just as a human being. You know, that if the person doesn't have an expectation from the moment, they get to see how the moment is happening before their input. I mean, it's a strange situation. We are that odd part of the natural world that is using the sounds of its own movement to define itself. That means sometimes when I look at inferior species, I'm like, it hasn't clicked for many creatures, you know. I feel in the future there will be technology that will advance the evolution of animals. That means imagine there was this advanced AI kind of like helmet-like thing. You put this on your dog. I mean, it's just natural. Let me tell you how the idea develops. The person sees nature separately. The person sees the technological realm, you can say, separately. And so eventually you're going to see an intersection of nature and technology. You know, phones are in our hands today, but God, you know, the cosmos knows where it will be next. What that means is like, I honestly feel that it's like we may translate ourselves digitally. Because there's an opportunity cost to everything. If the person chooses to see this world more unknown than known, they will doubt everything. You know, which is okay. But I'm saying, and if a person sees the world known than unknown, they will believe one thing and they'll never have doubt. What it is after object worship, idol worship, as the idols were kicked out of our hand, the next thing was subjects. And so language worship hasn't stopped. People suffer as concepts that actually are only existent in their inner realms. It's fascinating. That means I understand suffering has a physical consequence. Like the person falls down, they hurt their knee. Yeah, you're experiencing direct suffering. But what pain means to you, that is internal interpretation. Pretty much, intelligence is all about what the person has accepted to be reality. And the whole point is, in a changing system, what can you accept? What can you accept when things change? It's kind of like you can say a belief is like a shirt. You know, the person wore that shirt. And it's like, I don't know, it's like imagine, um, you know, pretty much I'm saying we outgrow the models of perception we have. Just like how the person entertains a new set of clothing. The thing about nature is that I sometimes feel it has no care for man's thought. It has a care for authenticity, though, with a sort of true being, regardless of what the person does. That person in the story was in nature so long that nature was no longer a concept. And I can tell you one of the most astonishing moments of my life was when I had this Tibetan Buddhist book in 2013. I think I broke the world record of being the most Tibetan Buddhist Persian guy on the planet. You know? But there was this book from this Tibetan Buddhist meditation book, pretty much. And in it, there was a concept about emptiness. And it was something that the Buddha had said. That, for example, and if you put an object... Jesus. Sorry, guys, there's a bee here. Oh, my God. Sorry, guys, I got distracted by nature. Shakespeare has this quote. He says, a ship can sit in harbor, but that's not what a ship is made for. And we have Rabindranath Tagore, this poet, saying, you cannot cross the sea by merely staring at the water. What does that mean? That means the human life is a potential of design and evolutionary update. Biologically, physically, it's pretty much just grow with your world. I don't know what other purpose there could be physically. Just grow along your world, just like how everything else in nature is doing, you know, growing at its own pace. But I would say, in regards to the inner realms, it's to use the technologies at hand. So it's kind of strange where nature has somehow considered the unnatural And it's fascinating. I mean, just think about it. We are an evolutionary process. What does that mean? That means somehow an object has become a subject to itself, and this subject has found an ability to even notice beyond how it has considered itself a subject. That means what will be left? That means imagine there's endless realizations that I'm not this, I'm not this, oh my God, I'm not this. You know, you will be left with nothing, and then at the end you're going to be like, I'm not even nothing. And then it becomes really mystical after that, you know. Some people are afraid of being nothing in life. But let me tell you, you cannot be afraid of nothing. It is impossible. People have tried. People have tried only to, in some sense, realize that what you bring to the table suggests, you know, I don't know how to complete that metaphor really. We're just inputting energetic patterns into this realm. It's like we're programming the future generations by the way we live now. So guys, there's for those who are new to the channel, there's a segment to these shows, to these talks that I give, that I've called it pretty much a quote tunnel, where I read a bunch of quotes about a certain theme or a person. So today's episode, this evening's episode, is nature. Alice Walker. In nature, nothing is perfect, and everything is perfect. Trees can be contorted, bent in weird ways, and they're still beautiful. Khalil Gibran, forget not that the earth delights to feel your bare feet, and the wings long to play with your hair. Albert Einstein says, look deep into nature, and then you will understand everything better. Henry David Thoreau says heaven is under our feet as well as over our heads. That means I think we should call the surface of the planet not the surface of Earth. We should call it the lower heaven. We should call the surface of the Earth the lower heavens, and when we look up, we see the upper heavens. Let's say, because Henry David Thoreau has a good point here. Heaven is under our feet. That means this earth can too be a paradise if you walk properly. This is a Native American proverb. We don't inherit the earth from our ancestors. We borrow it from our children. Wow. Frank Lloyd Wright says, I believe in God, only I spell it nature. Guys, I can't lie, I wear a similar jersey as him. But it's not believe for me. It's for me, God is like universal intelligence. It's pretty much the absolute unconscious. It's the collective unconscious. The absolute intelligence of the collective unconscious. What that means is it's like you see how a human being has potential. Well, guess what? The universe has potential, but what kind of potential? It could be personality based, or we could be just limited to seeing things as personalities. Both are applicable. Rembrandt says, choose only one master, nature. I'm clapping for nature, guys. Lao Tzu says, nature does not hurry, yet everything is accomplished. And really, guys, that's something as a principle I use for my work. That means if I don't feel natural, then in some sense I can't continue. Because association with any archetype or with any thought, I will tell you, it's like it pushes the person away from the actual event. Laura Ingalls Wilder. If you truly love nature, you will find beauty everywhere. Rachel Carson. There is something infinitely healing in the repeated refrains of nature, the assurance that dawn comes after night and spring after winter. Pythagoras says, leave the road, take the trails. Henry David Thoreau says, live in each season as it passes. Breathe the air, drink the drink, taste the fruit, and resign yourself to the influence of the earth. John Burroughs says, I go to nature to be soothed and healed, and to have my senses put in order. Jacques-Yves Cousteau. For most of history, man has had to fight nature to survive. In this century, he's beginning to realize that in order to survive, he must protect it. There's a whole world out there, right outside your window. You'd be a fool to miss it. Charlotte Erickson. Mahatma Gandhi. To forget how to dig the earth and to tend the soil is to forget ourselves. Carl Sagan. Preserved and cherished the pale blue dot, the only home we've ever known. Frank Lloyd Wright says, study nature, love nature, stay close to nature, it will never fail you. Galileo Galilei says the sun, with all those planets revolving around it and dependent on it, can still ripen a bunch of grapes as if it had nothing else in the universe to do. Wow. What an incredible quote. Emily Dickinson says, to make a prairie, it takes a clover and one bee. One clover and a bee and reverie. The reverie alone will do if bees are few. Voltaire says, men argue, nature acts. You know, guys, a thought occurred to me as an interesting algorithm the human being can apply. If a person acts as if every moment is important, you can say that's a shortcut to realizing what is actually important. Anyways, guys, to continue with the quote tunnel. Mary Curie says, all my life through, I believe she's a very notable scientist. All my life through, the new sights of nature made me rejoice like a child. Leigh Hunt, colors are the smiles of nature. Andy Warhol, land really is the best art. Gretel Ehrlich, everything in nature invites us constantly to be what we are. Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, the best thing one can do when it's raining is to let it rain. Ralph Waldo Emerson, many eyes go through the meadow, but few see the flowers in it. Robin Williams, spring is nature's way of saying, let's party. William Shakespeare says the earth has music for those who listen. You know, when Shakespeare says the earth has music for those who listen, I kind of interpret that, I guess, from my context in this sense that what he's calling music, I call intelligent rhythms, as if outer space is like an ocean. And so when a human being goes into a current of intelligence, it's like a fish in a current. So, you know, I feel that we're making a mistake by feeling space could ever be empty. That's air no bueno, you know, existential air no bueno. Henry Matisse. There are always flowers for those who want to see them. This is kind of key too, guys. That I mean, I may be looking too deeply into the quote, but I feel sometimes when a person really something is important for them and they really pursue that importance, there is something. There is something that happens that sometimes it's like this strange boldness. You know, this was something that I feel I was blessed to kind of learn from my grandfather early on. You know, this boldness means that if the person sees something more efficient, they don't hold back. So imagine the person practicing every time they notice something efficient, instantly implementing it. Be bold because it makes no sense to have this much evolutionary intelligence and not to use it, Bill. Joseph Campbell says the goal of life is to make your heartbeat match the beat of the universe, to match your nature with nature. Oliver Wendell Holmes Sr. says the amen of nature is always a flower. John Burroughs, nature teaches more than she preaches. There are no sermons in stones. It is easier to get a spark out of a stone than a moral. David Attenborough says, I just wish the world was twice as big and half of it was still unexplored. Aristotle says, in all things of nature there is something of the marvelous. Claude Monet, this artist, says, the richness I achieve comes from nature, the source of my inspiration. And Antoinette Brown Blackwell, nature is just enough. What men and women must comprehend and accept her suggestions. And Richard Feynman, he says, I think nature's imagination is so much greater than man's. She's never going to let us relax. Wow. Incredible quote. That's why we have to build the advanced civilization. Because we can now, simply said. And guys, now we get to the bonus part of the talk, where I thought of sharing the greatest story never told. I mean, before I actually get into that, I'm going to say one thing. The mind is a soul-class generator. I want to tell you certain inner realm visions that has inspired me to make a conclusion of the origin of a completely separate geometrical dimension. You see, the thing about design when it comes to consciousness, that it comes to a position where it endlessly regresses, where the person is wondering who's watching, who's watching, who's watching, who's watching, who's watching that who's that watching that who, and it endlessly regresses. I feel that while we are being human beings here, while we're treating ourselves as objects that are projecting subjects, I feel that what the mind is doing is that it's being simultaneous existence, and we don't realize that there is an endless curvature to how stories become reality. You know, that means it's as if, like, imagine there is a mind here, there is another world here simultaneously, and it's not that we can not see it, it's that it's like we are the imagination of a higher dimensional mind as a memory, and now imagine an archetype, a sense of self from your own past has to now become the future archetype. The attention has to revert from that. I feel that the last step of humanity is not extinction, it's liftoff. Because it's like how much we notice that all events are subjective. That means when somebody declares that something is accurate, that accuracy is dependent on how long that condition remains. That means everything anyone has ever said, if you put a surveillance camera on history from that moment onwards, so many complex things come and replace it. But I feel what it is like, I don't know, guys, bear with me. This is an idea I haven't shared before. It's like everybody is being watched. This life that they're living is like a screen being watched by a self that was never here. Now, that self that was never here doesn't mean it doesn't have multidimensional access. What I'm trying to say is that nature is another mind. We're inside a mind, unknown mind. Our known mind is inside an unknown mind. And think about how, like, if you were to close your eyes, wherever your attention goes to, that subject arrives. I'm telling you, it's like a person can be in a cold situation, close their eyes, and visualize a moment where it's a sunny day. And their body will suddenly stop taking the cold as if it's like cold. It's like the body actually doesn't have a brain. The body is the brain. That means the brain is the throne of consciousness. I feel in every moment there is as much potential to see endless phenomena there, and there's a potential to see nothing there. And this is an implication that our eyes see value in the room. That you look at an object and it's your attention that is imbuing it with its quality and nature. That means the quality of life, believe it or not, is how you look at things. That's the biggest suggestion of what kind of quality of a life the person is living. That means if your attention could not have an ideological owner, I feel it would revert down to multiple presences of itself. Check this out. There was the number zero. I mean, let's say first there's space, zero, and then we have number one. And once you have one, all the other numbers can come from the number one. That means technically you need zero, one to have consciousness, the most immediate consciousness. So it's like the attention that has manifested in this lifetime gets access to a conscious self based on how it lives in this life. And by the nature of seeing that conscious self, just you see yourself in one moment, then you can compare that one moment to endless kinds of moments in an update. You know what it is? Our memories, our mindsets, our views are kind of like the psyche is like a photo album. And the person can, this is, I think, the true value of meditation. It's like, rather than the person not having thoughts, the person's like, I'm having thoughts? What are these thoughts? And the person starts actually noticing how the mind is a movement. Pretty much, I'm saying that if we were a memory in some higher dimensional mind, the most immediate thing to do is stop associating with our relationship to the form. Simply why? Because think about a person closing their eyes. The moment you change your attention, the content of one inner event becomes absent and the other content becomes into your spotlight. So I could tell you that a person could be looking at someone, but their attention could totally be somewhere else. Now, what does that imply? That implies that their existence is right there, but their consciousness is somewhere else. And where is that? That's the inner realms. It's like languages evolve, or any system technically. It evolves by first seeing what the system is, finding a better model, comparing it, updating it. There you go. You know, that's it really. And there is something about novelty. This is something, I don't know if Terence McKenna really spoke about this. He spoke a lot about novelty, but I don't think maybe he spoke about it, I don't know. But there is, I have this comment that I would say many people are afraid of the new, because its implication means letting go of everything you have right now. That means if the person wants to live a new life, their attention is choosing a sort of thought pattern. The way I'm speaking right now, this is allegiance to certain ways of speech that I've seen in my life. You know? Guys, what if somebody in the chat section wrote, Nihal wrote, that's it, all good dash bad or in within? Guys, I want to tell you, what if every person you have ever thought you knew, every person you thought was your enemy or friend or whatever, it's like, can you see how all of that were simulations of language? This doesn't mean they didn't have value. This doesn't mean they weren't real. It just means that they are linguistically kept. Language is the most important thing. That means if you're a parent and if you want to give, if you can only give your son like or daughter or like one sentence of wisdom, do you know? It would pretty much be, wonder what language is. That sentence is so powerful. That sentence is, I can't tell you, it's like language is something that I have a love and hate relationship. I love it when you observe it and you don't associate with it. I hate it when people think they're language because it possesses them into the design of the language. That means what is really happening is that we are a natural phenomena, and as we're being raised in this life, what's going on is we're being bombarded. We don't see this. We don't see this, but it's just the way the system has been built. And it's not something that we should be ashamed of, and it's not something that we should fear. You know, an advanced civilization, all that it sees is its own advancement so many steps ahead that it's like every moment we are behind, intentionally. Really, guys, I don't know what else I can say about the greatest story never told, you know? Guys, I would like to create a concept here, maybe do justice to this concept, the greatest story never told. I think this is a very important moment because this concept is called, I pretty much feel this concept is just so beautiful to me. It's like, what is the greatest story never told? Life eterna. The fact that by accepting we are temporary, we reach the paradox of how can we know what the temporary is if we don't already know what the eternal is to contrast from it. Really, what's going on is there's no more language instructions. People have to stop worshiping language. It's ridiculous, you know. The only reason cyberbullying is happening is because people feel that the other person accurately sees them. It's not true. This may sound strange, but it's also the beautiful mystery of why we continue. Do you know? Is that actually no one ever knows anyone. We know a percentage of what we have seen as them, at the same time realizing we don't have their eyes. That means, to be honest, it's like the moment I say these words, when I think about how people hear them, I'm like, okay, based on the number of people hearing them, it's like I can have no opinion. That means the person comes to a point where they're thinking, let's see, this is this the I don't want to say tragedy, but I think it's unnecessary, but there is some writers that are so focused. When I attended film school, they were telling me about the demographic, the audience, what audience you speak to, and my philosophy was so different than the whole classroom, you know, because they were trying to be engineers of a process that was actually built on the creative novelty. You see, that's something I realized, that regardless of what a person does, if you have a sort of character analysis and a world analysis, and you can be conscious of both these views, I don't know how to say it. Pretty much in life, you're either learning as a changing self in a world, or you're learning as a world changing in a self. That means when I look at my attention, there's moments where it's identifying. Right now, I'm giving this talk. In this moment, I identify with the alias Mr. Within, and I'm, this person. You know. Then after this talk, if there is complete silence, I am not a thought to myself. But if the moment somebody calls my name, the memory pattern is so used to the name bringing up. It's like every time somebody calls your name, neurons fire up. You know what I mean? It's like the neurons are like, oh my god, instructions, get up, boys. It's like we gotta run into the battlefield now. So, really, what it is freedom. If you're fighting, you're not free. That means it's this strange thing that the system can be as cruel as it wants, but if the person is cruel, it defeats the purpose. Pretty much the only way we can have an incredible backup system of an advanced civilization is that the idea of the advanced civilization echoes on in the inner realms of people. That means whoever you are, if you're even a grandfather and telling stories to your grandkids, tell stories of how advanced civilization will be. Because I'm telling you, It's literally ideological systems are occupying attention. Just like how people need light to survive. Do you know? Similarly, it's like ideas need attention of human beings to continue. So there is also, like I will tell you, an intentional reason why I speak about a broad field of subjects, because the whole notion is time is passing by. If attention doesn't stay on the phenomena is technically void. So it's pretty much saying, like, your whole life you might have been thinking you're just an object, you might have been even treating yourself like a specific subject, but after some point you'll notice the sands of the hourglass falling, and that's when the mind starts roaring. When you start asking yourself, if you were on an island in the cosmos right now, if you were in an island in the cosmos right now, sorry guys, just anyways, if you were on an island in the cosmos right now, who would you be to yourself? I don't know how many people cultivate awareness of what they are in silence. It's pretty simple. Even in like video games, this concept was there. You know, there was this game Skyrim. The person could just rest and like recover. What does that mean? That means soldiers would go on battlefields back in the day, technically. I mean, it's just so common sense. You can see it. It's like soldier would go in a battlefield, giant war would happen. The person would survive. What would the person do? The person would drop the sword instantly. Just drop the sword instantly and just sit down and take in just the chaos that just passed. You know. So that's the thing. It's like absorption, practicing. Practice cultivating an attention to your state of mind. And guys, I want to say something, something I just honor in just the human mind. It's like directness of communication. That is the most crucial thing. That means what is more important than what kind of world the future generations will be or what kind of senses of self they will have is their decision-making ability. And their decision-making ability can only come if they have an awareness to the space before what's moving in it. And I will tell you guys, I encourage people who are fans of this show, if you've been listening to these talks for a while, join the Discord discussions afterwards. Because technically I mean, I don't even need to say that, it's just like we're alive once. Incredible, isn't it? Every day happens once. Every day, if the person, you can watch the day happen or you can happen in a day. And I've learned something. I've learned just like how our ancestors were hunter-gatherers. Just think about this, guys. Think about this notion of the hunter. The hunter would go into the forest. You are looking for something. You find the target. Your attention focuses on the target, on the mannerisms of the movement of the target. That means the hunter that goes into, let's say back in the day, just went and threw a spear at an animal. It's like that hunter didn't know what it's doing. The person studies the animal's sensitivity, the animal's spacing, the animal's noticing. Do you know? That means the thing is the person should throw a rock at a distance and see how far the animal goes. Do you know how sensitive the animal is, for example? So what I'm saying is just like how the hunter focused on the target, there was a sort of teleological evolutionary urge. Do you know? Now it's very important that when the person wakes up, there was first the jungle, then the concrete jungle, now the data jungle, the information jungle. Okay, a jungle of ideas. We don't see it. We're just chilling, walking in the side of the street. But every person's mind is filled with different, you can say, algorithms of how sequences of language and imagery are being their lives behind their eyes. In this moment, the whole cosmos stands alongside the human species. Mainly because it doesn't have a choice. We're all existing in one moment. I honestly feel if we are to treat ourselves as an intelligent being, if we all had jetpacks looking like, if a person was looking from the sky at humanity, it's just the communication of these human beings. That means it's like killing. It may physically be intelligent, like the person's being savage in a creative physical way, but it's not internally intelligent. What does that mean? That means sometimes there isn't stupid people, but there are stupid choices, you know? And the sacrifice of human nature for artificial leisure is a flaw. We have to free the world from the language we have caged it in for so long. There was this physicist, quantum physicist, they asked him, hey man, what are your experiments like? And he's like, buddy, it's like we took a jaguar or cheetah, a jaguar from its natural habitat, put it in a cage, then now we're saying this is what a jaguar is. It's like, how can you break something and then treat it as if nothing happened? You know? Man has to become immediately life sensitive. That means the person has to look in the mirror and look in the mirror long enough until they find their true commander. You know? That means it's like now more than ever there requires to be a sort of piloting. What does this mean, piloting? I speak about it, but I don't know how many people realize what I'm saying. It means you notice you can, by not putting any effort, just think about this for a second, by being completely effortless, by being effortless, you instantly learn from how the world is implementing its effort. I can't tell you how fascinating it is when the person makes listening their ally. When you make your sensory perception, pretty much I say it in this way, where you befriend your mind, your intelligence. And when you make your intelligence your ally, you begin treating the value of the moment as the whole moment. So, what does that mean? That means if you push someone, you're technically creating a pushing archetype for yourself. That means nobody can hit someone without hitting themselves. The impact hurts them as well. And the thing about life is, like, it's boring to break things. You know what it is? It's pretty much like kids building Legos and another kid breaking it, and we're like, okay, what does that prove? Does that prove power, strength? Does that prove intelligence? I don't know. It's like breaking never proves intelligence. What does that mean? That means if we went back to the caveman, we gave it an iPhone, it would probably bite it. We'll be like, holy shit, we totally didn't calculate for this. We thought it's gonna like look at it at least. But imagine we gave the iPhone to the caveman and it instantly like bit it. Would be like, whoa. So it would be something where, and imagine we came back and we realized that became the story of how the chimp, how man fell by kind of taking a bite from the forbidden fruit. The forbidden fruit was an Apple phone. Reality is really playful, guys. I'll tell you this. Nehal, guys, in the chat section asks an incredibly important question. So, what is the potential way for freedom from the language cage? So far, I mean, I wanted to say so far what you think, but I'll tell you this. If there's a cage, you got to study its design. That's it. You're pretty much attention that appears as a moment of manifestation, and you study the design. What else can consciousness do? It just looks at what's there. That's the first thing. You look at the design of your reality before having any emotions. That means let us create this model that to perceive truly life eterna, excuse me. I would say that after you look at things on a design level, after you realize there's a geometry to all phenomena, that it has no good and bad to it. That's the thing about design. It's free from any sort of morality. It's like geometry. You know what I mean? Like a shape can't be good or bad. So after one perceives the geometry of their moment, and the best thing to do this is in nature, I would say. But as you perceive the geometry of your moment, then comes based on how honest you want to be as a person. It's a choice. What does that mean? That means to be honest, there's like, imagine if it was like a phone plan. It's like what comes with honesty in this world. Let me tell you, um, a lot of simple, peaceful karma. There does come moments where the person is the fool of the moment. This happens, you know. You know, guys, there is this thing though. You feel like a fool until the concept of a fool is foolish. You know, it's like you just comprehend the dimensions of your realm. You care to look at what is here. And now the world is, in attendance. The coolest feeling we can really create. I was thinking about certain ideas, even I'll share it now, like on the educational system. I was thinking that, uh, like children in grade one, they should be taught gardening. They should be just in elementary school taught gardening and healthy decisions about uh, knowledge of food and exercise, pretty much. You know, I would say in middle school that they should open the mind of the child. Actually, we should get pretty much. I was just saying, like the most basic things that a human being needs to maintain humanhood must be shared at a very young age. So pretty much we gotta kind of like arm the future generations as they suddenly open their eyes and run into the battlefields of how the future is going to treat them. You know, it's fascinating. There's this idea in Vedanta. It's called the vision of the two birds. And what is this vision of the two birds? The story goes that there is two branches, an upper and lower branch. And on the lower branch, there is a bird, you know. And this bird, from the beginning of its life, it has been working. It has never stopped moving. So this bird is building a nest, teaching its children, the future generations, how to fly, but it has never stopped working. It is just existent by the nature of movement. Now, on the upper branch, the same bird is sitting in a position still, looking down, seeing the moving bird, and this bird has never moved. It's literally like there is an edge of stillness to the soul and an edge of movement. So this is the edge of stillness. When you reach the edge of stillness, it's very easy to not be a concept. But if the body is moving, then the body requires navigation. So just the senses are just more in the driver's seat. Guys, in other talks, I also suggested something about the educational system. I just remembered. I said that every child can't graduate into the next grade until that child plants a tree. That means imagine all these children that are just, imagine every child in the educational system just plants a tree. That's it. And hopefully schools become like flying castles. That would be the best kind of school, no? It's like the school just orbits, hovers above the neighborhood, and all the kids with jetpacks just leave their door and they just go to school. They fly up to their school. It's like, okay, the school's above my house, time to go to class. The kid flies out of the window. Or maybe by that time there wouldn't even be physical homes. Maybe like the walls of a physical home could instantly become transparent. It's like the mind is like a river, The body is, or what the body believes, is like a cup of water of this river. You know, imagine somebody, they get a cup, empty cup, they take it under a waterfall, and the person looks at their friend and they're like, "Yo, man, I have the waterfall in my cup," you know. And it's like on some level, you see that the person doesn't have the whole waterfall in their cup, but they do have a bit of the waterfall, you know, the water that fell in their cup, you know. So it becomes this kind of situation where we can choose to believe the limitation, or we can choose to wonder about the limitless and unknown, and pretty much make a civilization where the species can safely release the genius of their inner realms onto the outer realms. You know, there's so many ideas. Sometimes when I give these talks, I honestly feel like I'm like a blue jay flying over like a forest. It's like endless branches, endless ways to enter moments of how the concept was there first, or how the context suggested how the concept was there. You know what it is? Imagine an alien came down, the aliens came down, and they're like human beings. You know? Well, who are you? What are you? Do you know? Let's say that moment where an advanced alien civilization had made contact with humanity, you know? And human beings suddenly looked at the alien and we just all started laughing and we're like, we're whatever, man. We can be whatever. And the alien is shocked. It's like, what do you mean you can be whatever? And we just all laugh and say we can be whatever, you know? That means we realize our humor is the most advanced mindset. It may not be a physical technology, but it's technically an advanced neutrality, you know? So the extraterrestrial suddenly thinks to itself, oh my God, you know, these human beings have transcended their limits of animalhood, that they feel they can be anything now. They are more galactic than us, you know? And everybody on Earth starts laughing because we're like, okay, whatever, aliens, you know, just let's get along, you know? I think the first thing we should do is like show the aliens like an incredibly long film. I think that would be the best thing. Let's say if extraterrestrials came down to Earth, we need to show them like a 200-hour film just to see how tolerant the extraterrestrial is. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? We're like, okay, if this extraterrestrial has watched this film for 200 hours, then we can brand it as like a peaceful extraterrestrial. Do you know? And that would be the most genius way to communicate what we are, so the extraterrestrial doesn't have confusion. We pretty much have to create a film of the species for the aliens to watch, you know? We're like, yo, aliens, here, take this popcorn, you know, sit down, watch this, you know, and be nice to the species. Guys, of course, I'm being scientific, science fiction, in a science fiction like context, playful here, you know, so keep that in mind. I mean, really think about it. Let's say if there is a teacher outside the person and the person thinks they're a student. Can there be a teacher? What does that even mean for an outer teacher? I sometimes think about it because everything is being your mind in the moment. You know, right now I am seeing like this tree outside in my yard. And I also notice that when I say I am seeing it, that's dependent on my conscious attention to the tree. That means reality is whatever that's in the spotlight of attention. If they put the model of just a pure immaterial context or a pure material context, these are all just whatever's in the spotlight of attention. The attention is the mystery. I don't know. I mean, when I look at it's, you know what it is. It's like the person's like looking for truth in a universe. It's like, oh my God, where is it? The person's looking in their pockets. They're looking in even the pockets of the universe. The black holes of the universe. And the person suddenly realizes they are the mystery in the room. We are the main event. We are the main event. This right now is like, it feels scripted to me. Not the language of the realm, or just how language is made in the image of some evolutionary nature, just pure natural behavior. But I would tell you, it's more like, it feels like it feels like the universe is confused. And so man has to communicate. You know what it is? We're like that employee that has to communicate to the employer. We have to usher in an advanced civilization. What that means is, if you take one step with your body, take two steps with your mind. And I would even say something more: take as far steps as you can, and whatever you get will be way more than what you could have got if you only were one step ahead. There's a story of this merchant back in the day. It's a dervish Sufi story, so it was like in the in Middle East and whatnot, and it was like caravans would go from different towns to towns, merchants taking merchandise and selling it, and pretty much that. So the story is, there's this merchant who their caravan comes to the city, and this merchant is so wealthy, and it's so like, the conditions of living are so hard. The merchant is not like trying to like, make profit from a starving world. Do you know what I mean? So the merchant goes there and says, people, I'm here, whatever you have, you can come and share or trade or whatever, you know. And people come, and the caravan goes on, and gets some people pay, some people can't pay, they just give an object and they trade. Imagine there was a government machine, where just like a vending machine like thing, but you could go and give an object there. I don't know. I don't know. That idea seems maybe strangely, in a certain context, efficient. Anyways, this merchant, one person doesn't have anything, and the merchant's like, all right, man, it's like, everybody's pretty much like just barely making it in this desert here. And the guy says, I don't have money, but I can tell you one thing. And the person sees the act of kindness from the merchant, and what does he do? The man says, there's this Sufi, this enlightened Sufi back in the day. Enlightenment in the dervish context was called the pearl. Okay? So this guy who has nothing to give this merchant says, hey man, there's this enlightened guy, this guy who has, this dervish who has the pearl. He lives at the edge of the town. Go and see him. Maybe it's worth it. Maybe it's way more precious to you than money. You know? And so this guy who's in the town, it's like the horses have to rest and all that, and he's like, "All right, let's go see what's this about." And he goes and he walks to the edge of the town, at the edge of like the neighborhood, and he sees there's this house where I don't want to say like its door was tree bark, but it might have as well been. So this house that is not like the best house, right? It's a very simple kind of house, And so this guy goes in to the house and he knocks on the door and the door opens and the dervish opens up and the dervish sees this person has come out of nowhere. And back in the day there was no, like, you could totally see, like, now people just FaceTime and like communication is so instant. Technically we've mastered teleportation in regards to sound and image. you know Virtual teleportation, we've kind of mastered that. But I would say, like, this guy anyways goes to this dervish. The dervish opens the door, welcomes him in, and the guy goes in. And so the guy sees, right when he enters the room, he sees this dervish only has like a mat, only has like a teapot, and a lamp, and everything's like the ground, or like, I don't know, some maybe, yeah, I think it's just the ground. And so they're sitting there on the ground, and what happens? And yeah, the merchant suddenly wonders about, like, he looks at this guy and he's like, "Oh my God, how is this guy living with such minimalism?" You know? And he says, "My friend, my Sufi friend, where is your furniture?" As the Sufi has passed the teas and they're drinking tea, he says, "Where's your furniture?" And it's strange because the Sufi that was so welcoming suddenly looks at him, and with intensity, this dervish says, "Where's your furniture?" And the merchant for a second goes, "Whoa, what?" He's like, "Did this guy just say, 'Where's my furniture?' Didn't he realize I'm a guest in his home?" And he says, "What do you mean, where's my furniture?" And the Sufi, sorry, the guy says, "What do you mean where's my furniture? I'm a traveler here." And the Sufi suddenly smiles as if it was all like an act to prove a point, you know? And the Sufi smiles and says, "So am I." That means the Sufi was such a mystical human being that manifestation was like a temporary house you're in. I am telling you, it is very true. The reason I have centralized my attention on these talks is because I feel actions of the mind echo longer than actions of the body. It's not per se the best view, but I'm saying that for me, there's something about, we have like 25 years or 30 years before the technological singularity to update the mindset, the viewer, the user of the technology, before the technology becomes a higher level. Alright guys, I'm typing something, but I think it's easier for me to say it. Pretty much I'm saying if you ask what is moving the moment prior to language and thought, uh, there is something being, like nature is, before man is a verb, you know? So that's the thing. Excuse my language, but we've nouned the shit out of the world, not realizing our intelligence is like a verb. It's like somebody, add some reverb to this, cosmic soundtrack. Anyways, guys, thanks for listening. Um, I I don't feel I can really fully share the greatest story never told. The whole notion was that there is prior to this a geometrical dimension which eventually reaches a point where it's not a psychological entity. When you're not a psychological entity, literally you're not like a container. And when you're not a container, that's kind of like you can say it's like you notice how life is moving. Think of it this way. It's like treat your intelligence as an antenna where every moment your attention, your intelligence is perceiving, literally like a radar scan, you know? When you look at animals, one thing they have is that they have incredible attention. They have hyper attention, and we're calling ourselves animals, but we don't have that kind of we think we don't have access to that kind of attention. I'm telling you, there's something about the human being that is not normal at all. That means we're considering normality, we're defining it, but I'll be honest, all the animals on the planet, it's like, no guys, you're not animals, definitely. Like if all the all the species on this planet could talk, it's like, no, you guys are like, imagine like one day like this person could somehow telepathically communicate to the cow. And the person's like, oh my God, cow, can you hear me? And the cow's like, yeah, man, I can hear you. And the guy's like, no way, you know? He's like telepathic communication with the cow. Now imagine the person's like, how do you animals see us humans? And the person's like, like aliens pretty much. The cow is like aliens. You guys are aliens. And the human being's like, no way, we're all thinking we're animals like you. Why do you guys say we're aliens? You know? And the cow's like, yeah, because you're kind of like butchering our species, just because you can't eat like vegetables. That's such an alien invasion kind of thing to do, no? To come devour territory and declare our own righteousness. That's definitely alien invasion vibe, like, you know. So that cow's pretty much telling the human being, you guys aren't human because if you guys aren't an animal, because if you were, you would care for the animals. You know, you would realize the significance of it. That means honestly, it's weird. I will tell you, we're neither animals and we're neither like just pure experiencers. Honestly, I feel people are just stumbling through ideological intent in accordance to how much energy the body has, to express something. So when nature nurtures your nature, pretty much what it is like, I'll sum it down to this last thought where it's again like this incredible scene from the movie Gladiator. I can't emphasize the scene enough. It's like there's a scene where it's a deleted scene of the movie Gladiator where that general body of Gladiator who, what do you call it, betrayed him at the beginning of the film, he had kind of no choice. That guy at the end, before Maximus goes to kind of fight the weak emperor, to kill the weak emperor with his own hand, what happens is that the general body comes to Maximus and says, I'm a soldier. He says the army is here. I'm a soldier. I obey. We can like get you out of here pretty much. And Maximus just looks at him and smiles, and he says something. I don't remember the exact line, but the idea was like, uh, nature never puts one through something it has not prepared them for. That means nature, it's like man may think he's unprepared or doesn't know and all this, but nature is intelligent. It's intelligent is by its mere being. And the mind, you can say, it's strangely like accessing an invisible cinema screen. But it's not a screen like a actual film. It's like an attention. Because it's not even behavior. So much of it is like all about attention to the important. And what is important is natural, I could tell you. There's signs from nature's mind all the time. The biggest sign of nature's mind is when you look at yourself in the mirror. And I don't know. I feel like we're left with studying our attention truly. And if a person can do that, that it's like you'll realize why I'm saying the only guru the person can have, their only guru or teacher, is their moment of being. Why? Because their moment of being has been with them from the beginning. Seriously, there's no like even in Vedanta you go you and see this thing where they say the whole point of the outer guru was to make the disciple, this is from a Vedic mindset, make the disciple realize the inner guru, or they would have to follow some person for the rest of their life, something from the outer realms for the rest of your life. So what it is like, don't it's like we are here to see not just the world, but to also get to experience ourselves. And that's when freedom really becomes real. And once freedom becomes real, independence is instant because the person recognizes mortality means uh, the pilot has to now navigate the attention before the plane of existence. Anyways, guys, thanks for listening. I hope this episode was helpful. Um, Most likely there will be a proper Discord talk in a couple hours when the next talk uh, makes an entrance. So thanks for listening. Blessings. And guys, I'll do this thing where I would do it when I would do start at the beginning talks where I would do a mantra at the end. Now I'm kind of feeling a very peaceful vibe. So a mantra is just a syllable, and you simply, as you say this syllable, um, there's a silent meaning to it. So it's just a mere action. It's just sound. Perhaps the greatest story never told can only be heard in silence. Rise, mankind, rise.